thanks for coming. Thank you, G2. Thank you, DevOps Boston. This is actually the result of 2 years. It's actually the result of 2 years since DevOps Days 2014. Came for the first time, listen to what people have to say, put a fire in my belly to change my org, make things better for my team. And I did a lot of reading, a lot of research, and this presentation is a result of that. So yeah, people metrics. How do you use team data to produce positive change? Let's get started. So who am I? I'm Amin Astaneh. I'm the Senior Manager Infrastructure Services at Acquia. Acquia provides support, hosting, and professional services for the free software project Drupal. We've been there around since 2008. I've been in the operations team from 2011 to 2015. While I was there, I formalized incident response and ticketing process as an ops person. I wrote automation tools to manage a rapidly growing fleet. We have 15,000 servers now that the team is responsible for keeping up online in EC2. Last year, I implemented the Kanban process in 2015 to track work in progress. And now I'm currently the tech lead for Tools team, which is a team that builds automation for the operations team. And I'm a people manager for the senior system admins in my group. So let's talk about metrics. So when we think about metrics, what usually comes to mind, we usually think of like CPU and memory and disk and network and application response times and application uptime and error rates and things like that. And you're using this data to pretty much make a decision about what to do about it. So is a person getting paged? Should we scale infrastructure? Should we revert a change, etc.? So we use these metrics to pretty much direct our decision making and what we do. But here's the thing, it's not the whole picture. There's a missing essential in building and operating software, which is human beings. They are a key piece of infrastructure that keeps the service up and customers happy. So it stands to reason we should be measuring these people too. So what can this people metric stuff accomplish? So if you're a manager and you want to keep your team engaged and happy and retain, these metrics can enable you to do some things. You can be proactive about quality of life issues, so alerts, fatigue, and toil, and all those nasty things. Making team status transparent to the rest of the company, because if you're, in a dev team or an ops team, you're enabling the business to win, right? So people should know what's going on. It allows you to make justification for funding for more staffing resources if you're saturated or if there's a resource problem, and to identify opportunities for process improvement. Now, if you're a revolutionary or a person that's trying to raise awareness and urgency around an opportunity or a problem in your org, people metrics can do this. It allows you to convert anecdotal experience, the pain, into empirical data, numbers. Reveal the operational cost of current conditions to leadership, so they understand what's going on. Identify constraints in key business functions. Why are things slow? Why are we not getting features out or tickets out as fast as we should? And finally, win members of leadership to your cause. So there's a little graph there from the 8-step process for leading change by John Cotter. It's a good read. The book is called Leading Change. So, per the discussion earlier about making sure we keep it within the boundaries about us talking about unplanned work and pain. Simply complaining about a problem isn't going to work. So from the goal, which is kind of the prototype for the Phoenix project, the goal of an organization is to increase throughput while reducing both the inventory and operating expense. So what that means is you have to communicate with leadership on those terms. If you're not talking about producing more widgets and making that process cheaper and making it so they don't have money tied up in inventory, they're not going to listen. You have to speak in those terms. So what's going to influence decision makers more effectively? So you have 2 examples here. The first example is, working on Team X stinks, we're always firefighting and doing tickets. Or you can say something like this. So 40% of our time is spent in incident response, and 30% is spent in manual tasks that the business needs. That's 70% of our time not spending on making improvements to the product or streamlining current processes. What's more compelling to the people that have, the purse strings and making decisions, right? So let's talk about metrics, people metrics, things that we can measure, things that we can show. So the Phoenix project says that there are 4 types of work in IT operations. And I would argue the same is true for development teams as well. So you got business projects. That's new features. That's what you want to be building as a software engine. Internal projects, cleaning up the tech debt, investment in CI/CD, making things more streamlined, making things faster, making things more reliable. Operational change, you have to do releases, you sometimes have to provision equipment, you sometimes have to configure it, and then unplanned work, which is your outages and your firefighting and all that. So the idea is, if we somehow measure this stuff, and the quantity and the percentage of each work over time, then you can show the business where their money's being spent. So what do you do with this? So let's say we actually generated these metrics and we're able to graph them over time. So clearly you want to find indicators and make decisions that allow you to keep unplanned work to a minimum. For a development team, what you really want is most time spent on business projects, writing features, because that's how you do your business. So you have the priorities here. Business, then internal projects to make the business more faster, then operational change, and then finally unplanned work. For our ops team, it's a little flipped around. You want the maximum time spent in internal projects to keep the service online and issues resolved as efficiently as possible. If you have, a good portion of your time spent in automation and documentation and process so that you don't get the tickets and you don't get the pages, that's great. So let's get this out of the way here. I know there's probably going to be some internal debate, discussion about this, and that's great because we all can learn from each other. But I come from an ops point of view, and unplanned work is waste. What that means is, as a manager, I'm asking my team to burn a portion of their time fixing something that broke that probably shouldn't have been broken. That's not value add. That's not providing value to the business. That's not moving the business forward. It's not helping the bottom line, it's not helping margin, it's not helping any of these things. So we need to think of unplanned work and firefighting all the time as simply throwing money out the window. So here's a quote from Tom and Shelly. I'm sure you folks recognize that name. He was a former Google SRE. I think he works for Stack Overflow now. If more than 25% of a team needs to be dedicated to ticket duty and on-call, there is a serious problem with firefighting and a lack of automation. So if you're able to actually gather these metrics and see that, well then you know that there's a problem. So let's talk about a simpler metric. It might be difficult for you to be able to say, okay, here's your business projects, and here's your internal projects and your unplanned work. So you can do something much simpler, which is just measuring operational load. So that's the percentage of time spent towards the upkeep of your service. So it's time not writing code or making things better, moving the ball forward. So Google SRE, as an example, they cap this metric at 50%. And if it gets exceeded, all of that toil, that work, just goes to the engineers. It regulates the flow of features based on how sustainable operating the service is. So why 50%? Why did they choose 50%? Well, there's probably a lot of reasons, but one that I did notice, for the folks that read the Phoenix Project, in the back of the book they have this graph, and I wanted to share this graph with you there. So wait time, right, so that's time for something, for a request to get filled, is equal to the percentage busy divided by the percentage idle. So once you exceed 50%, so 50% over 50% is 1, customers start to wait longer for work to get done. So as you approach 80%, so that's 80% divided by 20 is 4, it really gets out of hand. So you really want to get it under 50% so that customers don't have to wait for stuff to get done. So Slack is your friend. And I don't mean the chat service. I mean idle time. With Slack, it means that your team can be responsive to bursts of unplanned work without a business impact. I actually have my Scrum Master right here. Hi. So what percentage of our time is dedicated to Slack?
Oh, we do about 20-ish story points, and about 5 of those are just unplanned work, a bug popped up, a thing caught on fire, a tool didn't do what it was supposed to do, that type of stuff.
Right, so that's 20 to 25% of Slack. And the reason why we do that is because bugs will pop up and we need the capacity to be able to react to it immediately. Just because we don't like unplanned work shouldn't mean that we don't plan for it. Slack also means opportunities to improve skill sets and team morale. If there is Slack, your team has more time to work on projects, to learn new languages, to enrich themselves intellectually, to have a much more fulfilling job, And they're probably going to stay. So the 20th century management style of keeping Slack lean and non-existent, making sure that the team's 100% utilized and you don't, have too much, overhead, it doesn't work because it actually creates constraints. The flow of work can be inconsistent. Amazon could blow up tonight and then we're all going to be up late dealing with it. Be prepared. So let's talk about happiness metrics. DevOps can be kind of touchy-feely, so let's just get right into it. So let's talk about happiness, right? So here's a way you can measure happiness of your team. So every interval, which could be per sprint, per week, per month, per quarter, whatever, you can ask your team these questions. From a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being I am really unhappy to 5 being I am ecstatic, how happy are you doing your job? So in terms of your particular duties and what you're doing day to day, how happy are you doing that? The second question is, how happy are you working at your company? Do you believe in its vision? Do you believe in its values? Do you believe in what you're doing? Also, you can ask these normal open questions. What makes you the most happy? What makes you the least happy? And what have changed and most improved your happiness? So why would you do this? Well, it identifies common morale from the team, how people are feeling day to day doing their job. What are the current effects of toil, crisis, etc.? Do you have a very unhappy team? It's better for you to know rather than someone go and submit notice and you have no idea why. So yeah, also identify common improvement opportunities. If people are saying, I am doing too much tickets and crits, then you can probably do something about that. And finally, you're preventing burnout and employee churn by being proactive and polling the team for the level of happiness. Bless you. And responding to that data rather than, again, being told that here's a resignation notice on your desk. So here's some other example metrics that we can talk about and explain. So you have cycle time, right? How long will someone wait in a given ticket? If you're able to measure cycle time for all the stuff that's going through your system, you can then tell somebody, okay, from the moment that you have submitted this request, this is how long you're going to wait. You also have throughput. How many issues or requests have been closed per day, week, month, whatever. Just like throughput of requests going through, a web server, do the same thing for people. Frequency by request type. What should be automated first? If you have, 50 capacity planning tasks in a week, maybe you should automate that capacity planning task. Frequency by root cause. What bug is causing the most pain? I can actually talk about this. Someone on my team actually spent some time writing some code that talks to Jira, where given a bug, you have all the tickets linked to it. And being that we track our time and all the tickets, we're actually able to sum up all the time associated with a given bug, and then multiply it by the cost per hour for an ops person, and then we can go and tell engineering, this is the dollar amount of this bug right now. Maybe you should go fix it. It's rather compelling. So, per person time tracking. So, you want people to accurately track their time in order for your data to actually mean something. So what you really want to see is, 5.5 to 6 hours a day. People go to lunch, people use the restroom, people go to meetings, people chat, whatever. So if you have too little, you're probably not getting good enough metrics and people aren't just keeping on the discipline of time tracking. If there's too much, well, the person's working too much and will probably burn out, so you should tell them to go home. And then, of course, you have reopened issues and bugs, which are defects going downstream, which in the DevOps world is bad. So you should measure that and see what's going on. Maybe there's a class of work that isn't properly documented. So let's say you have no idea what you want to measure. So let's go to old standby. So Brendan Gregg, he's a performance guru at Netflix. When he talks about servers, when he talks about services, he talks about use method. For every resource check, utilization, saturation, and errors, USE, use method. So why don't you do the same for people? So you can do utilization, you can see, what the percentage of the team is spent on a particular work type, or just in general, how many hours a day they're doing a certain thing. Saturation. Is everyone doing 6 hours completely tracked? You're saturated, you can't do any more. Errors. Are people making mistakes? Are people sleeping and not making it work on time? Are people missing alerts? Those are error metrics too. So why not do the same for people? Be careful. Don't use metrics as a weapon. The data is important for you to be able to create improvements for your team. The moment you use it for a weapon is the moment that you lose trust, and then you don't get the data you'll need because people won't report it. So all this stuff I talked about sounds real good, right? And now we want to get started and do real things and get the data and start making changes. So here's some basic steps. So the first step is to track your work using a project management or ticketing system. From a sysadmin point of view, that if you don't have a ticketing system, you really need one right now, and get one. Seriously, you should be doing this. So then you just log your time. You start logging your time on each issue that you're working. So for ops teams, they should be logging their time on everything. And then for dev teams, they should only be logging time on tasks that are toil, which is your manual labor and the things that aren't related to development or improving the service. You can then also track non-issue data using custom tools, maybe for example, number of interruptions, number of pages from PagerDuty. And then with all this data, you start creating reports and dashboards that are meaningful and tell a story. And then you use this data to make and influence decisions with, within your team if you're in management, or you show it to your boss if you're trying to influence change. So okay, let's say we've gone through all these very basic steps, and I got the data. So what do we do with this? So the first thing you can do is simply just get some dashboards up and put them in a place in the office. In Acquia, we have 4 displays right above the ops row, and several of them display key things like ticket throughput, proportions of unplanned and project work, and the business and all of that stuff. So it's there. What's up?
Is ops on fire.
Oh yeah, we also have Is Ops on Fire, the Is Ops on Fire, which has a list of issues that are of high severity. So it's important to document this stuff. If you're going to put up dashboards and graphs, it's probably important to document it so people know what they mean, and to be able to determine if a service or a team is healthy or not. And this creates empathy for your team in current conditions. It's really amazing to be able to show graphs to people and say, my team is here, and this is what they're spending their time on, and this is how many issues they're dealing with per day. And when you show that to them, you show them the data, they start, usually the response is, wow, I had no idea how hard you guys are working. How can we help? So having data and showing it to people generates empathy. So you have to have data first. So, okay, so you review these graphs daily or weekly as part of your stand-ups. It isn't useful if you don't look at them. So every day during stand-up and Acquia operations, we look at several key graphs. Again, issue throughput. Oh, if the issue throughput was down, well, let's figure out what the unplanned work metric was. Yep, there was a big spike of unplanned work. Oh, what happened? Oh, there were several outages, yada, 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 and we're able to do an analysis. So when you see spikes and anomalies, you start asking questions, and you dig into the ticket system to find why the graphs look the way they do. If you start finding patterns, then you can create action items to address the common themes. So the data only works if you consult it often. So sharing with management. So again, it's all about operational cost, inventory, and throughput. That's what businesses care about. That's what people with the purse strings care about. That's what CEOs care about. So you need to speak to them in terms of time and money. Again, this is really serious. You need to speak to them on those terms, or you're not going to get what you want. Here's some examples. $5,000 of Team X's time is spent rebooting servers due to bug Y. You put $5,000 on the table because of this silly software bug. Maybe we should go fix it. Customers are waiting up to 2 weeks for Team X to respond to requests. Oh wow, 2 weeks is a long time. Customers are going to get angry. Maybe we should go figure out how to automate that. It takes 1 hour on average to perform task X. Wow, we do this all the time. Maybe we should go do a lean analysis and figure out where the waste is, and then we can go eliminate it through automation again. We need double our usual EC2 costs when bug X is unresolved. That's a big statement to be able to give to the leadership. What else can you do with this data? You can define something called a target condition, which is pretty much like, this is what I want the metrics to look like in the future with a target date, and you set your goals to achieve it. So you can say, okay, 90th percentile cycle time for tickets should be from 2 weeks to 1 week in 3 months' time. That is a target condition. Or another example is reducing operational load to less than 50% in 6 months. This concept of target conditions comes from a book called Toyota Kata, which goes back to Toyota production systems and lean manufacturing. So, yeah, this sounds good. I really want to get into making these metrics. Let's do it. Cool. So, if you just needed to get into some metrics right now and you don't have a whole lot of time, there's some real basic stuff you can do. So these quick examples involve stats-D, right? So there's a thing called a gauge. So you can, here's my happiness metric. I can say, script 5, I am really happy. Boop, and it plots 5 until you say otherwise. Cool, right? So you can use something like this or embed calls to a GraphI server with people metrics in this fashion. Makes it really easy. You can do counters. So you can count how many times something has happened. So for example, let's say I hacked an Amazon Dash button, and every time I press it, it's because it got interrupted. Someone came up to me and said, Amin, do you have a minute? I'm like, oop. So I can go and do that, and then it'll graph how many times I'm getting interrupted, and then I can take the derivative of that, and I can see the rate over time of how much I'm getting interrupted, which might be useful. It might be good to see that a particular human being is getting interrupted all the time. That might mean he's a single point of failure, and therefore we should probably make sure he's writing docs to prevent him from being interrupted all the time. So what if I can't code? Like, I know this is DevOps Boston, but I can't make any assumptions. Maybe you just want to gather some information for a technical team and you're not yourself technical. That's okay. There's lots of things you can use. So Jira, if you're using Jira, has lots of reporting capabilities. Some of them are just built in, and there are lots of plugins that you can install. Some of them are free, some of them are not, but they might work. Business intelligence tools, we in Acquia use Domo, so we get all the Jira data, we export it to Domo, and then you can make crazy dashboards and stuff. Which is really great because then you can show people, hey, this is all of these issues over the last quarter was due to this root cause, maybe we should focus on this root cause. So it's nice to have business intelligence tools help you do that stuff. There's also Amazon QuickSight, which was released last year. I haven't used it, but it is a business intelligence tool that might be reasonably in cost. And then finally, Google Forms. Google Forms is really simple, and it allows you to get survey data in the form of a spreadsheet, and then you can do normal spreadsheet things, make graphs and stuff. So you don't have to use stats-D or Graphite or SetUp or InfluxDB or anything like that. You can just use a spreadsheet. It's fine. So I asked Acquia management if I could show you some source code. Unfortunately, they weren't really willing for me to show it, but I'm going to give you a little bit of hints. How many of you guys in here use Jira? All right, cool. So I'm going to kind of walk you through this as best I can without me making my managers upset. So if you create a custom field called work type, and you set up your business and internal and ops, change and unplanned, like the 4 types of work, and you put it under issues, you start tracking your time. Now you have in Jira time associated with the 4 types of work. So the tables you care about is first work log. That's where all your time is being tracked. Okay. And the second thing you need is a custom field value. That's the thing that maps the custom field you just made to the tickets themselves. So this is what you got to do. If you look for entries in that work log table, where the work log issue ID is equal to the custom field.issue, and you're doing a where clause on the specific custom field value, custom field, you can sum up all the results, and you can generate your own metrics and not say no more. In addition, I also put a link to the database schema so you can do a little bit of digging, figure out what's going on, and you can write these metrics. So I'm sorry I couldn't share with you some source code, but I think an enterprising person with 30 minutes on their time could probably figure out what to do. Use the sum operation. All right, so for the folks that can't code, I want to enable you guys to be able to generate metrics right now, right? So let's create a happiness survey. Let's do that. Why not, right? So we're going to do that right now. We're going to go into forms.google.com. We're going to make one right now. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new form right here. And we're going to say happiness metric, because I want to be happy. All right. So you go up here and you're like, look, multiple choice. So we want the 1 through 5 working in your group, 1 through 5 working in the company, right? So we just say, okay, linear scale, 1 through 5, label, not happy, label, really happy. And then I do bit. Oh, I have to actually say, how happy in team? How happy in company? Real simple, right? And just for the sake of expediency, I'm just going to add one more question, which is your paragraph, what makes you most happy? All right, cool. So we have a form. That's all I had to do. I'm really happy, guys. Cool. So I made a thing. That's great. Now you should be able to get the results somewhere.
Responses.
Responses? Where is that? I'm sorry.
Next to questions.
Oh, there it is. Well, there you go. Hey, look, I even made graphs. Man, Google's awesome. How long did that take? Like a minute or two? So you guys can generate metrics right now without writing a single line of code. You guys have no excuses. So that was it. Yeah, this was a culmination of 2 years of a lot of work trying to figure out how to make my team a happier place in Acquia. I wanted to share all of this with you. I'm really humbled to be here. This is actually my second time being in DevOps Boston, and Dave was nice enough to ask me to share. So thank you for your time.
That was Amin. Thank you so much. The reason why I asked Amin to come and present is first and foremost, he understands how to drive decision makers, right? And to the data, to the metrics, and then how do you communicate that? Too many times within our community, within our Slack channels, things of that nature, we see a lot of like complaining, but I'm going to say like it has value, right? The complaining does have value. What do we do with that? It's a sense of therapy, venting, things of that nature. But one of the things that Amin brought to the table is like, all right, how do we take that energy and make it into a positive action step? Let's create visibility, data, and metrics, and then that's how you speak to executive decision makers, and it's going to tie right into our panel. But excellent presentation. Thank you very much. I will be posting the slide deck. So for all of you guys that are very interested, Amin's contact information, his blog site, and also his slide deck will be on the site. So definitely hit him up. Great job, Min. Another round of applause for him. It was great. Questions and answers seminar, 5 minutes, quickly. Any questions you guys might have that you want me to answer right now? Raise your hand. Here's the microphone.
Hey, awesome presentation. I love it.
Thank you.
I think it's very inspiring, but it kind of makes me wonder that you missed one type of work, and that type of work is writing this old stuff down. It feels like a drag. Like recording stuff is not easy, and it's difficult to sell it to your teammates. So hey guys, I got a great idea. Here's some more work for you.
Yeah, I can talk.
How do you deal with that? How do you make it easy and sort of not a drag?
Yeah. So the question is, time tracking sucks. So how do you get people to do it?
Yep.
I agree. Time tracking does suck. At the same time, it's really important. So I had to make some tools and some automation to make it easier. So one of the things that we ended up using was something called Toggle. Toggle is a SaaS that does time tracking, and you can integrate it with Jira, and you can just click and say, okay, basic notifications and reports and things to make it easy. A second thing I did is I wrote a tool. I wish I could share it with you. It would be really cool. Maybe I could talk to some senior folks, see if I can get it open sourced. So I made an assumption in Jira that if you commented on a ticket, but you didn't time track on it for that day, you probably didn't log your time. So I wrote some very basic SQL statements that generated a YAML file that is pretty much the list of the tickets and the time, and email it to the person. And then I also metric how many work events have been tracked. So that creates it's not for shaming, but it's visibility into, okay, these people haven't been tracking their time, maybe you should go do that. And then I provided a tool written in Ruby where they can provide that file, that YAML file, and then it will ask them, hey, here's the ticket, here's the date, here are the comments you made, how long do you think this took? and then they're able to provide their estimations, and then they can go ahead and put that in. So it actually made time tracking a lot easier, at least from the post hoc perspective. But I agree, the act of having to, okay, I'm moving to a thing, I have to press the start button, and then I have to remember to press the end button. It is painful. And there's some efforts that we've made to make it easier, and some feedback loops to make it easier to track the time. So I guess what I've been telling the team is it's worth it, because taking that little extra overhead to track the time makes it possible for leadership to argue for change. And of course, we've done some incentives like, hey, if you track all your time this week, you're in for a $100 gift card. You're giving people, you're bribing them practically. But again, it pays off in dividends and making the team happier in the long run by giving them what they need to succeed and giving the company what they need to succeed. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Right on.
Yeah, that's it's a very good point. One of the things to tie into that is, a little bit of extra work to solve a problem that people won't have to deal with in the future is the investment that you make. And that has to be communicated. Not only communicated, but a lot of trust has to be between the team and the management that, hey, you know what, I'm investing this time right now because I know in the long run it's going to solve a problem that I won't have to go back and be reactive to. But very good point. And it's all about staging communication and follow through, right?
Gets assigned.
Very good question. I could probably do another talk just about that.
Repeat the question.
So the question was, how do you triage the work before it gets assigned to people? So yeah, again, I'm going to try to keep it short. So you really have two streams of work. You have the unplanned work, which has to be treated immediately, and then you have the not everything else, right? So I think the more interesting stuff is the everything else. We use Kanban, and the way that it works is that we're measuring how many issues are being processed on a daily basis, and it's kind of like retrospective from a sprint. What yesterday's weather was, how many story points are completed. And we have a morning prioritization meeting every morning at 9. And stakeholders from around the business come together, sit down, and we're saying, okay, we estimate that we can complete these many issues today. So what are the most important issues of the business? That does something very interesting, because you're taking people from different silos that usually don't speak to each other ever, and they're going to have to make a decision about, this is the 30 issues that we need to do today. And they all have to be in agreement. It was hard establishing that and starting. There was one day where every single stakeholder from every group that was in that meeting was yelling at me at the same time. It was tough. It was very tough. But now there has been a greater awareness around the work that actually gets done by this team that makes the business run. So it was actually a really good strategy. In the long run, it probably needs some automated prioritization, but for now it works. As for unplanned work, it's a bit simpler. You have the severity 1 incident, which is an individual customer being down or impacted or whatever. And then you have the severity 0 incident, which is multiple customers are impacted or down, and you prioritize the severity 0s or the severity 1s. If there's multiple ones, then you start bringing people in, and that's where the cumulative effect of unplanned work really hurts you, because time spent doing that is time spent not doing the other things that people really need. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Sweet. Thank you very much.
All right, excellent. Hey, Amin, awesome presentation again. Yeah, round of applause.